Well, good morning, everybody. I don't know if you can hear me. Is this okay, great. Well, thank you for joining us both in person and online. And yes, we really want our local community partners to join us at the table. Thank you so much for being here. We do have a pretty packed agenda today with a lot of interesting conversation, but we're going to go through a little bit with Maria on housing partnership, and then an update from Mana Resource Center. Douglas County Administration will provide an update, as well will the Douglas County Attorney's Office. As always, we'll have a bit of a heart update, and then really looking forward for any executive member updates that you may have for us. So again, thank you for joining us, and we'll turn it over to Maria.
Okay, good morning. Thanks for having me. My name is Maria Chano. I'm the Executive Director of the Douglas County Housing Partnership. Go ahead and my slide. You can go ahead to the next slide. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Douglas County Housing Partnership, share a bit about our programs and some of the great things that we've been working on. So our mission is to achieve economically thriving communities through providing, preserving and developing housing choices in Douglas County. So we're the housing authority for the town of Parker, the town of Castle Rock, Douglas County, city of Castle Pine, the city of Lone Tree. Next slide. And I'm going to go quickly through some of our housing programs. And we're going to also bring in a little bit of discussion about housing affordability and what it takes to be able to afford to rent in Douglas County. Next slide. So starting with our home buyer education counseling program. So our services span across the housing continuum. We provide a once a month free class for folks to get educated on budgeting, credit management, loan options, what it takes to purchase a home. And it's a very popular class, and we also have it available online as well as in person. And NeighborWorks studies have shown that the pre-purchase counseling has resulted in a 16% reduction in loan delinquencies as compared to the non-counseled borrowers. So that's an important factor for housing stability. Next slide, please. Our home buyer down payment assistance program, which will be revitalized by Proposition 123, is available to people who are looking to purchase a home that need help with the down payment to get moving. So this program, we haven't been able to do much over the last few years just because of the really high prices and interest rates and low availability. So the reality is that 71% of Coloradans who are earning under 75 grand per year or $36 an hour are seeing that the lack of affordable rental and home ownership is a serious problem. And 42% of homeowners are feeling the pinch. And this is coming from the 2023 Colorado Housing and Land Use Survey. So the availability of bringing in down payment assistance can help close some of that gap. And so we're seeing the highest level of interest rates in over 20 years, and it's sidelining so many different people. So with the Proposition 123 money, we are able to contribute up to $100,000 in down payment assistance to a revolving loan fund. And we're also able to reach up to 100% of AMI, so higher income levels, reaching more of our middle income as well as our low income residents and helping them to get into a new home. So this is so important because we're seeing that home prices have had a 17.3% increase in Colorado. Meanwhile, wage growth has only been at 5%. So it's just important that we're able to bridge that gap and help provide some tangible solutions to the escalating concerns and help more people get into a new home. Next slide, please. So our foreclosure mitigation and counseling program has also been very important, especially recently. Most of the time, folks are in the position of needing foreclosure mitigation and counseling because of unemployment or medical issues that are unforeseen. So we're able to reach out to folks, connect. We have a high capture rate, so 99% of the people who are facing foreclosure, DCHP is able to connect with and provide some type of counseling and budgeting to them. And then we're able to look at some statistics, again, from NeighborWorks that show that homeowners who are able to go through foreclosure mitigation and counseling are going to be 3 times more likely to secure a loan modification and 70% less likely to redefault. So that's huge when it comes to housing stability if we're able to help folks who have a home stay in their home. And just in October, Douglas County had 11 residential foreclosures. And we've been working with these residents and trying to make sure that we're connecting them with ways to get loan modifications and provide some connections to emergency mortgage assistance funds. Next slide, please. We also provide HECM counseling for older adults who are interested in a reverse mortgage, and this is something that homeowners of all different income ranges and all different amounts of equity in their home can access. And we provide counseling so that people know how to take out a reverse mortgage in a way that's safe and how to identify predatory practices and so on. Next slide, please. So we're going to move on now to a little bit about housing stability and opportunity, and there's some data in here that I want to share, and some of this is fairly new to me and maybe to some other people. We were able to get our hands on the 2023 Douglas County Community Services Community Needs Assessment. We also reference data from the National Low Income Housing Coalition and other studies that have came out recently. And so from that, we're able to see that housing prices, and this is all, this you probably can't see this very well, but this map is showing that in Colorado, according to the Out of Reach study from the National Low Income Housing Coalition, to be able to rent a 2-bedroom in Colorado and not experience cost burden, which would mean paying more than 30% of your income to rent, you would need to be making over $32 an hour. The Douglas County Community Needs Assessment showed that number a little bit higher. Ultimately, we're looking at Douglas County needing to make $37.81 per hour to rent a 2-bedroom in Douglas County and not be cost burden. So just some numbers there to help you understand what it costs to be able to rent these homes. And then based on the needs assessment studies and the National Low Income Housing Coalition, we're able to see some examples of some of the professions that pay under what one would need to be able to avoid that cost burden that was mentioned. And then also, interestingly enough, the needs assessment, Douglas County Needs Assessment, cited data from the AD Works Q3 2022 data that shows that none of the entry-level occupations that are around pay enough to be able to work full-time and afford a 2-bedroom apartment in Douglas County without experiencing cost burden. So we're looking at, in Douglas County, 22% of households being renters, and then the needs assessment from Douglas County showing that 47.21% of all renters are cost burden. So they're paying more than 30% of their income to rent. And then also the study showed that housing is one of the top areas of need for the respondents. And that's nothing new. We're seeing that on almost every study that comes out for a variety of topics for the Older Adult Initiative, housing needs assessments, all across the country and all across our state. So again, cost burden is when renters are paying more than 30% of their income to rent. Severe cost burden is going to be 50% or more of their income to rent. And so we know that we're able to kind of put some of this in perspective. And really, I think a bottom line that most of us probably already know is that minimum wage just doesn't cut it. So if you're earning the minimum wage of $13.56 per hour full time, you would need to pay $710 a month to not experience cost burden. So that's about what my first apartment cost. So in Douglas County, that threshold, again, is $37.81 to be able to afford that 2-bedroom without that financial strain. Next slide. So in the next slide, we're looking at a low income. This is, we call it 30% of the area median income rent. So if we have somebody who makes under the $26,000 a year mark, they could qualify to live in a 30% unit they would pay about $698 a month. So just to kind of put in perspective the affordable rents for extremely low income renters in comparison to the average, the market rate price in Douglas County of the $1,966, which again is you can see on the slide is a 21.2% increase from 2019. So our 30% renters are often going to be somebody that's living on Social Security income. And if we're thinking about somebody who's getting SSI payments of about $952 a month, they can really only afford $286 a month to avoid that cost burden. And of course, when they're not, and when they're cost burden, they're paying more of their income to rent. That's where we're finding food instability and other, making decisions about whether or not to pay their heat and transportation and other important expenses. Next slide, please. And then for a 60% unit, which is 60% of the area median income, you can see the rents are much more affordable than the market rate, but still significant, about almost $1,400 a month. And these units are available to people that make under $52,000 a year. And so that's really when we're looking at that. I'm sure everybody in this room has been to the school district presentations, and in those you see the starting rate for salaries of people at the school districts under that. And all through, you remember the slide where we had all the little red X's, you can see so many people are under that mark. And this is really the 60% is where we have the majority of our affordable units. And again, the wages are, far below for entry level for folks to be able to afford this. So again, this discrepancy in between the wages and the costs just again makes people to make those tough choices and ultimately has been shown to lead to a heightened risk of homelessness, which is why we're talking about it today in this meeting. So those who can't keep up with these rising costs are going to potentially find themselves without housing or without suitable housing. And so these assessments that I've cited from really just underscore that critical need for affordable housing initiatives to continue to bridge that gap between income and rent, and thus preventing homelessness and providing those essential housing needs for our workforce. So Colorado is doing well. We're growing. We are growing jobs. Jobs bring people. People need housing, right? So simple there. Next slide. So this next slide, we're just trying to kind of draw it all together where we're able to know that, we talked about there's a super high demand. We have a depleted housing supply and for a variety of reasons, there's some underproduction. We're not seeing condos built, the starter homes, other things that are resulting in the underproduction. And all of this is bringing about higher cost and of course, loss of affordability, loss of natural affordable homes, and then creating that cost burden, which can also lead to challenges with paying rent, eviction, and homelessness. So at DCHP, we leverage housing stability and opportunity as some strategic tools to prevent homelessness and to sustain the local economy and workforce. We know that job growth attracts people, and that is going to continue to intensify our need for more housing. DCHP new this year is providing rental assistance. Right now we have 76 residents who are have their vouchers administered through DCHP. Additionally, on the housing stability front, we have received a transformational housing response grant from the state of Colorado that will help us provide some housing navigation services to make sure that folks who are displaced find a new place to live quickly. And with the housing vouchers, there's a ton of research out there that shows that housing vouchers reduce hardship and they provide long-term gains, especially among children. So although this number is low, we hope to grow it, and this is for our low-income residents and can really make a difference in our older adults' lives, as well as really providing some stability for families and children. And in addition to vouchers and homeless response grants, some other impactful diversion efforts include emergency rental assistance to keep people in their homes and prevent that eviction, which can so often turn into homelessness. Providing rapid rehousing, housing navigation is also important. It's when there's lack of availability, it's so hard to find something that works well. Additionally, transitional housing, such as the DC Cares program, can prevent homelessness and help people to get back on their feet and get stable there. So, underscoring the importance of case management and support through our nonprofit partners, Community of Care Network, and other housing stability focused resident services to help keep people housed in place. Next slide. So at DCHP, we are involved with 1,860 units that provide income-aligned affordable housing. And you can see I have a little chart down here at the bottom. So we were talking earlier about the 60% units, and you can see that that's where we have the most units available. And that 30% AMI, we just have very, very few because these are reduced rental rates and they don't naturally come with subsidy. So private developers building affordable housing in our community need to be able to cover their expenses, which are continually growing. We do also have 33 subsidized units, and that's for elderly and disabled residents at Renrock Apartments, and they are able to pay 30% of their income to rent, and which is huge. Go ahead, next slide. So go quickly through some of our up and coming. These are housing developments for older adults. So we have Ridgegate Senior, the Meadowmark, and Sophia, beautiful communities that will provide more housing opportunity for older adults in Douglas County. Next slide. And then another coming soon that we're working on and extremely proud of is the Unity on Park Street Apartments in partnership with Wellspring Community, made possible by Douglas County Commissioners and Town of Castle Rock's support. And this is going to be 42 neuro-inclusive units that provide an independent living program for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So another huge focus on our most vulnerable residents and making sure that they have housing opportunity. Next slide. And real quick, some up and coming things for DCHP. We are part of, new this year, we are part of the Enterprise Community Partners Preservation Cohort. That's all about identifying naturally existing or currently affordable housing developments or units and finding ways to acquire them or keep them affordable. We are participating in the Older Adults Initiative and listening tour and have been going around talking with older adults about their needs. And again, housing is right up there. Housing affordability, assistance with paying rent and food and other topics such as that. And then we are gearing up to work on a local housing needs assessment. And then we've also partnered up with DRCOG to be part of the regional housing need assessment that's coming up here. And then just a quick shout out and congratulations to the DCHP member jurisdictions for opting in and committing to being part of Proposition 123. And so by certifying with Proposition 123, it makes us eligible to apply for competitive funding that can help with land banking, building affordable housing, homeless services, and so on. And so next slide, that's the end of my presentation. I think that there's so much more that we could talk about. I hope that something that I mentioned sparks some curiosity or interest. And if anyone has questions, I'm happy to connect or talk and settle your curiosities. Thank you so much. Any questions?
Maria, thank you so much for participating with us. And in advance of Veterans Day tomorrow, happy Veterans Day, and thank you for your incredible service to our country and for all you do to address housing needs in our community. Let me just ask if there's any questions from our board. Yes, Marissa Harmon.
Good morning, Marissa Harmon, Lone Tree City Council. Thank you so much, Maria, for your great presentation. I think those numbers paint a pretty good picture of what we're facing in the county, and I wanted to just take a moment to talk about, I think the common theme through your presentation was partnership. From Prop 123 to Dr. Cog to Homelessness Initiative to the partnership with Douglas County, we have to come together to solve this issue. I have a question, and I'm hoping that you could speak to how any resident that's experiencing cost burden and needing some support can get in touch with the Douglas County Housing Partnership.
Sure. So we have an office in Lone Tree at the Lone Tree building, the Park Meadows building. So we are in that office Monday through Thursday and take appointments on Friday. So we take walk-ins. We have on our website a place where folks can contact us through email, ask questions. In fact, I woke up this morning at 4:15 a.m. I read an email from a resident who works full-time and broke her hand and can't pay her rent. So people are reaching out to us and asking for guidance through the website. And then, of course, we pick up the phone. So we try to pick up the phone and really try to meet people where they are. So I think that any one of those methods works for us, and pass that info along.
Great.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Maria? Here.
Maria, Jason Gray, Town of Castle Rock Mayor. I can't remember now, but did with the Wellspring La Quinta Unity Unit, is that are we utilizing 123 prop on that?
Good question. We are not. However, it will, those 42 units, we do anticipate that will count towards our development goals. So we have committed to hit a certain number of units, and those 42 units will be part of that. I have sorry. Here we go. So our financing for the Unity on Park Street community was secured prior to commitments to Proposition 123, and it's funded through, we have a $3 million ARPA grant from Douglas County, thank you. Of course, the waiver fees from the town of Castle Rock for $750,000, mill levy grant through developmental pathways. We've deferred some developer fees. And then financing through Midwest One Bank, and then using DCHP's bonding capacity and secured a 4% interest rate loan.
Great question. Any other questions for Maria? You know, I have a quick question for you. I was at a meeting with Denver South earlier today, and we're talking with the development community and a lot of our legislative lobbyists about what's going on with construction defects. And so in the workforce housing space, a lot of us are floating this notion of condo conversions and allowing for apartments to convert to homeownership and condos. But of course, you have that construction defect challenge. Do you have some thoughts around whether or not that would help with the supply of affordable housing to have more condo conversions? And of course, I recognize all the underwriting challenges associated with people trying to qualify, but owning your own residence, I wonder if that plays into the calculus at all.
Sure, I think it does. The details of how, I think as you mentioned, would need to be worked out. But housing stability isn't just about renting apartments. People want to be able to purchase and start to gain wealth, have something to pass down to their children. And so often, I know for my family, home ownership was that piece. And so providing those opportunities, I think would be so valuable. And of course, finding ways that we can start getting condos developed again. We absolutely need those. So I would say that, yes, we should look at converting apartments to condos. We should look at whatever we have available. There's things in the news about turning old strip malls. What could that look like? We're converting a motel. It's very costly. It's probably not the most cost-effective way for us to do it going forward. But so I think that we need to look at all of the different options available, and those construction defect issues definitely need to be addressed.
Yeah. Well, bipartisan effort, I think the legislature is actively talking about that this year in coordination with a lot of public policy groups, including Colorado counties. I know we're convening a pretty active session about that. I don't want to go too deep down this rabbit hole, but for teachers and members of law enforcement and our first responders that are not getting paid as much as they should and maybe can't afford a 3, 4, 5 bedroom house, to be able to purchase a 1-bedroom unit somewhere, especially in places where you have high vacancy in the commercial real estate space. And a lot of people are working from home, converting some of those spaces into residential to allow for people to build wealth. I think is part of what many are talking about. It's certainly piqued my interest. So I wasn't sure if that, probably more conversation with you offline, but.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that just one little add-on to that is our older adults. They're in these huge homes and they want to downsize, but they don't want to downsize to something that doesn't work for them. Right. So I think that we have a lot of work to do, and I am glad that people are talking about it and that we're coming together through and working on the Dr. Cog's housing needs assessment, and then our more in-depth local pieces, which by the way is funded through grants through the Denver Metro Association of Realtors. So we have support, and I think that people hear and see this concern, and they know that it's not just about making more housing, more rental units. It's not just about providing vouchers to our most vulnerable. We have to address that whole continuum to keep Colorado thriving and growing and a place that we can stay. I know I want my son to live close to me, and he lives 15 minutes away. That's too far, but I'll take it, right? And how many of us are having to be separated from our communities? We're hearing in the Older Adults Initiative about people moving here to be with their kids and their grandkids, but then they live here and the kids are having to live out in Commerce City because they can't afford it. So what can we do to keep those communities and people together so they can support each other for so many reasons, to get together and fill that isolation that we're hearing about more and more, that's causing issues with mental health all across our country, to food security, to childcare. So we all know these different challenges that we're facing here. And I do feel like I could keep talking about it, but I know my time is up. So.
Thank you, Maria. We appreciate that. And speaking of great partners, I'm really so thankful that Lone Tree is here, Councilmember Harmon. We've got Mayor Gray. We have Councilmember Hefta from Parker. We could not do this without our municipal representatives. And on that note, I know we feel like we know everybody, but you all may not know each other. And we have about 33 people online. So because you've taken the time to be with us today, I'd love to go around with quick introductions, starting here to our left.
I'm Sean Sanchez with the Douglas County Sheriff's Office. I work for the Reintegration Unit.
Thanks, Sean.
Mike Hill, Douglas County Health Department. Mike McIntosh, Douglas County Sheriff's Office, Law Enforcement Bureau.
Tiffany Marcito, Heart Team.
Matt Williams, Public Works Engineering here at Douglas County.
Kirk Wilson, Lone Tree PD.
Amy Edwards with the County Attorney's Office.
Marissa Harmon, Lone Tree City Council.
Dan Marlowe, Help and Hope Center.
Good morning, Erin White with Manor Resource Center.
Mike Polhemus with the Rock Church.
Maria Chano, Douglas County Housing Partnership.
Jason Gray, Town of Castle Rock Mayor.
Bill Hendricks, All Health Network. Dan McKelkey, Department of Human Services.
Abe Layden, County Commissioner.
Jennifer Eby, Douglas County.
Laura Hefta, Parker, Town Council.
Great. And for anybody online, I know we have some executive and working group members online with us as well.
Bob Laguerre, representing Mayor Kaufman, Aurora.
Welcome.
Kevin Duffy, Douglas County Sheriff's Office.
Hi, Kevin. Anybody else online? Okay. Well, I again am so proud of this group. I feel like there are a lot of issues we could probably tackle as a collective here. So we're really thankful to have you. With that, I know we're moving on to an update from Douglas County, and Dan Avery from staff, Special Projects Manager, has done a lot of work on the recent challenges and opportunities associated with the migrant influx into Colorado. I know we've seen about 23,700 Venezuelan migrants that have come into the Denver metro area. And of course, that's a small city. So addressing that compassionately but responsibly is a big priority for all of us, we know. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dan.
Thank you, Commissioner. When the city of Denver began sheltering migrants at a hotel in Adams County without consultation, the commissioners asked me to compile a brief policy brief on federal migration policy and local sheltering policies. And today, Commissioner Layden asked me to share some of that information with you as a precursor to a discussion about how that may impact homelessness. At the federal level, a variety of factors have combined to influence current migrant situations, including COVID-19, economic and policy turmoil in Central America, and the transition from the Trump administration to Biden administration policies. The Trump administration policies around remaining in Mexico required migrants to wait for their asylum hearings in Mexico. That policy recently transitioned away. Title 42 was a public health power implemented during the pandemic that allowed migrants to be turned away at the border who would otherwise be eligible to request an asylum hearing. Title 42 enabled expulsion of approximately 2.8 million migrants during that time. And then with the end of the pandemic and cessation of Title 42, the Biden administration implemented new rules that required migrants first to seek asylum in another country as they passed through from Central America typically, and to use an app to apply for asylum, an app known as CBP-1, and then to discourage repetitive illegal crossings, the rules allowed for prosecution of illegal crossings or crossings not at a port of entry, and established a 5-year ban on individuals who do so. Only a portion of those Biden administration rules were allowed to go into effect. Others are being challenged in court. Next slide, please. This graph shows the increase in border encounters during this period. Encounters during the period of Title 42 tended to be repetitive crossings away from a port of entry, while more recent encounters are more likely to be migrants that are presenting for asylum at a port of entry. Next slide, please. As you can see on these next two slides, the increase in migrants seeking asylum since 2015 has resulted in a substantial increase in the number of pending asylum claims in immigration court. And in most instances, migrants are released while they're awaiting those hearings. And you can see on the right just a brief description of what that asylum process looks like. There's an initial encounter at the border, a screening to determine whether a credible fear of prosecution exists that would allow for an asylum claim, and then either detention or parole while awaiting that hearing. In some instances, migrants are enabled the ability to access work permits during this time as well. Next slide, please. Here you can see a substantial growth in asylum court backlogs, and that those backlogs exist across the country. average wait time to have an asylum hearing is approximately 1,500 days. That equates to about 4 years, although not all migrants experience that level of delay. Next slide, please. Many of the migrants migration from Mexico has decreased, while migration from Venezuela and Cuba, primarily to access asylum processes, has substantially increased. Next slide, please. Migration from Venezuela is largely driven by the economic collapse in that country, democratic repression by Nicolas Maduro, and hyperinflation over the last almost decade now. As an example, a nurse makes approximately $20 a month in that country, whereas the cost of food is not far off from what it is here in the U.S. Over 7 million Venezuelans have fled as of last year. If we go to the next slide, please. This influx has substantially impacted border states and municipalities, and the state of Texas, as many of you may know, began busing migrants to other cities in 2022. The effect of this has been an increase in awareness nationwide of some of the challenges that had been faced by border states and challenges in assisting this population. The city of Chicago has begun discouraging migrants from coming, citing inclement weather coming this winter. New York is doing something similar, and the Mayor Adams has recently traveled to Latin America to try to discourage the flow of migrants from that part of the world. And uniquely, New York City is unique among U.S. cities in that it has a legal right, a legal obligation to shelter, stemming from a state constitutional provision and a consent decree entered into in the 1980s. New York City has recently sought support from other counties in the state of New York and has sought temporary relief from that right to shelter judgment, arguing that the current situation is beyond the scope of what was intended under that agreement. Next slide, please. Nonprofit resettlement groups have long provided transportation services to migrants to help them get to their final destination, but Texas's busing policy is focused on busing migrants to locations that have sanctuary policies. There's not a legal definition of what a sanctuary city is, but generally it means declining to provide information about migration status and limiting how long a jurisdiction would hold an individual on an immigration detainer. Next slide, please. In Denver, migrants continue to arrive 1 to 3 bus loads a day on average. During the recent peak, 200 migrants arrived per day. In response to the increased demand for sheltering, the city is changing its length of stay policies. Adult migrant guests without children are now allowed to stay in city shelter facilities for 14 days rather than 21. Migrant families with children are allowed to stay for 37 days instead of 30. So the recent changes are an effort to accommodate families to a greater degree. As of October 2nd, the city had incurred $26 million in expenses housing migrants. Of that cost, the city indicated that about $9 million had been or will be reimbursed from state or federal sources. Denver Human Services staff who is assisting in the sheltering effort does verify that arrivals have an alien registration number from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration. That is an indicator that that individual is in a migration proceeding of some kind, typically asylum. Assistance is then eligible for at least some federal reimbursement. Arrivals in Denver are often awaiting asylum hearings that are over a year out, according to Denver Human Services. And the city is making use of 1 congregate shelter facility and 5 hotels. You can see that the city is no longer making use of city facilities like recreation centers as they were earlier in the pandemic. In response to the situation in Denver, Adams County issued a public health order to try to address how sheltering could occur in their jurisdiction. And Larimer County initially provided support to migrants about a year ago, and the conclusion of that effort was that the nonprofit community that existed in Larimer County was not generally prepared to provide the kind of specific case management services, transportation, and housing supports that the migrant populations required, and that in many cases, they found the need to transport migrants back to Denver so that they could access other transportation services and ultimately get to their final destination. So some local examples of how this has impacted the community. The picture on the left is from a recent sweep of a homeless encampment that was primarily comprised of migrants whose stay at a nearby shelter had ended. Many Venezuelan migrants can be eligible for work permits, but often have financial barriers to obtaining them and typically instead work informally. So this concludes my presentation. I appreciate the time.
Great, thank you, Dan. Any questions for Dan? Yeah, Laura? Councilmember Hefta.
Could you just touch on that last part? Elaborate a little bit more on they can be eligible for work permits. That seems like a big way to solve the problem, to be able, folks that come here to be immediately eligible for some type of work permit and tax ID number to allow them to work to get the housing they need.
Right.
So could you elaborate on the problems with that?
Yeah. The Biden administration recently made some rule changes specifically for Venezuelan migrants that would allow migrants that arrive prior to July to be eligible for work permits. So, and then to allow for deportation of certain other Venezuelan migrants. But broadly, it is believed that allowing for work permits can certainly help address this issue on a pretty broad level. And that's something that a number of mayors of impacted communities have asked the Biden administration to help expedite.
Additional questions? I think for us, it leads with compassion, just like the 4 C's that we always talk about here in our homeless initiative. And, to my knowledge, I'm the first Latino commissioner elected in Douglas County. And I am deeply concerned with the plight of those that are seeking asylum and struggling from bad circumstances. Part of our perspective in Douglas County is that it is not compassionate to invite those seeking asylum to a cold weather climate and give them 2 weeks of housing only to have no place to go afterward. And again, now, is it 26,000, 25,000? Yeah, it used to be 23,700. It's definitely gone up. And again, not having a plan in place to address those that are coming after a couple of weeks it's just irresponsible. I don't think that's something that we can be casual about. And as members of the Denver metro area, being vocal about that is part of our perspective, addressing that well. If we had a great plan in the Denver metro area to address the needs of those that currently need our help, that would potentially be a different story. But right now we're facing a really significant homeless crisis throughout the Denver metro area. So adding to that issue with really a small city of people coming to a cold weather climate is deeply challenging. I think one of the things we talked about is in 2017, Denver passed a series of regulations effectively creating a sanctuary city, not enforcing immigration policies and really welcoming those that may not be going through proper legal channels. And ultimately that challenge has led to the influx of busing from Texas to Colorado. So we have really called upon the mayor of Denver and our neighboring counties to be clear that we are not sanctuary counties or cities. I was at a recent metro area county commissioners meeting, which is small but nimble. We represent half the state's population, over 3 million people. But all the commissioners there, including the representative from Denver, said, no, we're not a sanctuary city or a sanctuary county. So I think it's important to be clear about that and move forward compassionately, but thoughtfully about how we address those in need. But I thought it was important for Dan to bring this here today because I really respect and value the opinion of everyone here and our citizens online. So I'd be curious to know if you have additional thoughts, concerns, especially our municipal representatives. Mayor Gray.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think one of the frustrations I have, I think that unfortunately what happens right now is with the policies across the nation, it pits states against states, counties against counties, and towns against towns, and cities against cities. And this is a national problem. And I think that our nation has failed to address this properly. Because what it does is it does put Texas against Colorado and Colorado against whomever. And that's where my frustration is that, next thing you know, you got one county against another county. And I just don't think it's a national problem that should be dealt with nationally in a way that's compassionate and bringing people to areas that, one, have a better climate, or two, have better resources. And so that's my frustration is because, and then it looks like Douglas County is not compassionate, or Castle Rock's not compassionate, or Georgia or Texas or whomever the state is. And so I think that's my frustration.
Well said, Mayor. Anything else on this topic? Okay. So with that, we'll move on to our Douglas County Attorney's Office. Jeff Garcia.
Thanks, everybody. Commissioner Layden asked me to come and speak a little bit as follow-up for our camping ban. And I think that's really emblematic of the people in this room. Some communities will throw a rock in a pond and watch the ripples. This community puts a boat out to water and makes sure that it's sailing. And we did something. We got a lot of attention. We said we're not going to, we followed a court order, and we said we're not going to allow people to be in unsafe situations. So we made a camping ban. And what we've done since then is listen to every person who called. And for the most part, it was me. So everybody from the ACLU who called me and said that we were awful people, I listened to. For everyone who said we were going to get our comeuppance, I listened to. From the people who said, I just need this explained, I listened to. And then I came to all of these meetings and listened to the data and the information that was brought in. And in reality, we're not going to cite a lot of people. We're not. But the point of the ordinance was to make sure that there was a message that we weren't allowing people to not accept help. We weren't allowing people to suffer. We were going to be compassionate, and we were going to make sure that this ordinance worked. So we're going to continue to make sure it works. And I think Mayor Gray said a wonderful thing. We want to make sure that we're working in collaboration, and it's never county against county and municipality against municipality, that we're all showing compassion together. And we're going to talk about a couple more things that we're going to work on to make sure this ordinance is doing exactly what we wanted it to do. Can we go forward? Do I have a button? I like a button. No? Okay, thank you. So we did pass this on the 27th. We got a lot of feedback. We received feedback from attorneys. We received feedback from municipalities. I know a few of you know that I came from the city of Denver. Colleagues of mine in Denver said, this is impossible to do. This is silly. We did this and we didn't enforce it. Well, that's not what we're doing. We don't make laws not to enforce them. The biggest thing that we did was look at the data, examine the problem, apply best practices, and say, we started a program, we started a law, we started a thought, and we want to make sure that it continues to work. So let's move forward a little bit. So there are potential areas of improvement. I drafted the ordinance. I know that there were areas where people would have some misunderstanding and they would need some clarification. We were probably going to revisit those and make them a little bit easier to understand. We want people to understand this isn't a law to punish, but instead an expectation for the public and an understanding of what your government is willing to do for you. The ones I got the most calls about were written permission. What does that mean? Can I still go to the fair and camp? Yeah, of course you can go to the fair and camp. Can I still go to a federal park and get a permit? Of course you can go to the federal park and camp, right? That's not what this is about. This is about helping people. Uneven regulation. And I really liked the comment that Mayor Gray said about getting people to work together, because I don't want a ordinance in unincorporated Douglas County to mean that more homeless people are going to go into Castle Rock, or more homeless people are going to seek needs from Parker. We want to make sure that this is uniform enforcement, and this expectation is across the county, hopefully across the state, and eventually across the United States, that the government is there to help and not to punish. One of the ordinances that I looked at, and because we're looking at best practices, was camping near water. Castle Rock has a wonderful camping ban around water, and we want to make sure that our water resources in Colorado are preserved, and we want to make sure people are safe. The other one is prohibiting fires. So when people are camping on public property, that they're not having flammable liquids or things along those lines. I pulled a headline from a few weeks ago from Fox. Denver has had huge fires, explosions, use of sterno burning down tents and spreading. That is not a safe situation. That is not a safe practice. That's not safe, something we want to see. But the one I heard in these meetings was living in vehicles, right? We heard it from the folks who spoke from the school district. We heard it from statistics that we've seen, that it's not people living in tent cities. It's people living in the back of their car, or their family living in the back of a Toyota. And we need to make sure that our camping ban and the resources we're setting towards it aren't just looking for the individual who's in a tent, but could be the person in the back of a Camry. So let's go forward. So our goal is to set that public expectation with addressing sleeping or living in vehicles, as well as offering means of help. Same means are available if you're living in your car as you are if you're living under a bridge or trying to, live somewhere out of sight. We want to help as many people as we can, and we want to take people out of dangerous situations. We've seen our first couple snows. We've seen the freezes that we have had. It is not a safe place to be. Living in the back of a vehicle is not a safe place to be, and we want to make sure people are finding their way to safety. And we definitely don't want to create a burden. We understand people's pride. We understand that people want to take care of their families, but we want to help them in that process. We don't want to make it more difficult for someone who is trying to take care of their family and keep a child in school, and so they're using their vehicle to do it. Let's go forward a little bit. So what we can do right now is we can regulate parking, right? We can stop people from parking in public places. We can put up signs saying no parking. We can investigate abandoned vehicles. But that's a broad sword, and it's also something that really fails to address the problem, but instead it talks about kind of a symptom of what we really want to help. So let's move forward a little bit. So in the coming months, we want to work with our partners. We want to work with our municipalities. We want to work with other counties to make sure that we have a clear expectation. We're going to extend the camping ban. And we're going to look at making sure that living in a vehicle isn't a safe thing, and we're going to prohibit it on public property in unincorporated Douglas County with the support of the commissioners. This is still something we're working on because we don't want to walk alone in this. We don't want to have people moving their vehicle from unincorporated Douglas County into a municipality. We want to all work on this together. We want to make sure that it's easy to adopt, and we want to make sure that we're helping everyone that we can. So let's move forward. This is some draft language that we're looking at. Nothing's been adopted. This is just talking and asking for our partners' feedback and input. It really just says that it's not a safe situation. We don't want you doing this in public spaces, and we want to make sure that we have an avenue, right? That point of contact to come seek someone who's having a difficult time and offer them the support that they can have. So let's move forward a little bit more. So the next steps, let's be realistic. Winter's coming. We want to have people out of those bad situations and move forward. So we're asking support from our municipal partners. We're asking support from community organizations, chambers, business organizations to make sure that we have a clear understanding and that hopefully we can have similar laws throughout the county and throughout the state so that we aren't moving people around, but instead creating that culture of support and help for people who need it. We are looking at those other areas, fire, water, making sure we're applying the best practices. Let's move forward one more. So what I'm asking here and what the commissioners are asking is that we work together and that we collaborate towards making this a standard across the county so we aren't moving people and hopefully engaging our neighboring counties to do the same. so that people are getting help instead of direction out. So contact me, reach out to me, call me, email me. I'd be happy to speak with everyone's municipal or county attorneys about this. I'd be happy to speak with individual organizations, so how we can better implement this. If this is occurring on private property, as we may have chambers involved, there are means to address that too. We can address that today. So if you have a business and people are sleeping in your lot, we can address that. And it's the HEART team going out, or it's posting the appropriate signs, or it's saying, hey, this is trespassing. We need to get you to a better place, right? And directing people towards resources. That's what we want to do. That's what the law was about originally. And that law is going to continue to try to be improved to make it as effective as possible. I think that's all I ask for questions.
Jeff, great job. And we have really appreciated Jeff Garcia. He brings a lot of insight from City and County of Denver and is doing a lot of great work in Douglas County. The bottom line is, being under a bridge is not a good place to receive services. And that's why, from a compassionate level, our HEART team is so actively engaging with those that are unhoused and seeking services. We had a presentation last time from Board of Education and the school district about housing insecurity among young people. So that is a deep concern of ours. But we really believe that our HEART team, our expert navigators, are the ones that can build that case management rapport, get to know those that are struggling, and really develop a solution for those individuals. The flip side is we're not casual about our public spaces and about our businesses. As a fifth-generation Coloradan, I said, working in Denver for so many years and going down 16th Street, where people were camping and burning fires right in front of 7-Elevens and businesses, and it was sort of okay to do that. Really tough to run a business, really tough to have a thriving economic corridor when those public spaces and when business spaces are overrun with those that are taking advantage of those spaces. So it's a balance, being compassionate, providing services where needed, while also facing the stark reality that we cannot allow people to vandalize and create harm for our businesses and our citizens that are working hard to keep Douglas County safe. Really thankful to the municipalities. I know there's a bit of a rush there with your attorneys to have companion ordinances around camping to ensure that, to Jeff's point, we're not just moving folks from one place to another, but we do have a uniform set of ordinances throughout Douglas County, particularly around water, wastewater protection, and ensuring that our public spaces are protected. I don't know if our municipal representatives had more. Parker at an interesting point in time this year, and I know you're working very hard on the overnight parking issue.
Yeah, our police department in Parker, they know who the homeless individuals are that are sleeping in their cars, and they routinely reach out to them. Many of them are employed in the local area. They do reach out, and I know the HEART team has reached out too. And I think that there was a really great point made that you made, Mr. Garcia, about accepting help. And so I'm hoping that Ms. Marcito will address that issue and give us an example of folks that are in a parking lot, that are working, that actually don't accept the help to get into a housing or in temporary housing or accept the services that the HEART team is offering. I think that seems to be the issue between the living in the car and getting greater services to get out of the car. So I'm hoping we can hear about that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Harmon?
Marissa Harmon, Lone Tree. I did want to mention on Tuesday night, we held a study session addressing, looking at a ban within 100 feet of any waterway. That would be whether it's currently flowing or it flows at a higher season, higher melt-off season. The question I did have for Jeff is, does this ordinance speak to anything about camping on or near a sidewalk and addressing ADA accessibility on sidewalks?
No, but I absolutely love that. I'd love to talk more about that. I think that's absolutely wonderful. We want to make sure that any kind of thoroughfare is safe. So I think that's a wonderful idea. Yeah.
I will address it to, in addition, when we have kids riding their bikes to school and that are coming across that, I think that's a safeguard. So thank you so much.
Yeah, that's absolutely wonderful. That's exactly the kind of feedback that we need to make sure that we have that uniform approach. So,
Thanks so much to Lone Tree for that study session. Anything else from the group on that? You know, this homeless initiative was birthed out of that exact issue. I mean, I was serving with my son at the Lone Tree Sustainability Cleanup, and we came across a huge encampment at that Target at Lincoln and I-25, and it was liquor and drug paraphernalia and little girls' underwear, and just, you know, my son, who was 11 at the time, was just kind of, what's going on, Dad? And it was a Lone Tree City Councilman, Jay Carpenter, that really helped galvanize, I think, the conversation. So part of it is you have these really beautiful walkable communities like Riverwalk in Castle Rock or in Lone Tree. And if citizens and families don't feel safe or comfortable walking and going to their amenities, it really creates a damage to the city and the reputation of the area. So I thank you all for the active engagement on that. I know Chief McIntosh had a brief presentation for us on a concept that was brought to us by Sheriff Weekly. Chief McIntosh?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. And it really falls right in line with Mr. Garcia's presentation. We've got an area where we are experiencing folks that are parking on a street in one of our neighborhoods, and our HEART team has gone out and contacted them. Our patrols are contacting them. We get calls from the citizens about them parking and really camping in their car overnight. So in kind of the spirit of what Mr. Garcia is talking about, what we wanted to do was to put up some no parking signs in that area on that street and see what kind of effectiveness that has. It'd be a great kind of a pilot program to see how that's working. I know that some of the pushback immediately is we're just going to be pushing our problems someplace else, and completely understand that, and we're taking the steps to ensure that that's not going to be the issue. But this is an opportunity for us to kind of move forward and see, just posting some of those no parking signs, the effectiveness of that, and then really making sure that those folks that we come in contact with know that you know we're compassionate about the situation that they're in, but there's also services that we can provide and try to get them on the right path. Make sure that they're, if it's really early in the morning, you know, our graveyard shift, that they get the information to the HEART team so that there's that follow-up. So with permission from the county to move forward in posting those, we can then start enforcing that.
Well, thank you for that, Chief, and our thanks to Sheriff Weekly for his leadership in that regard. We know you're out there firsthand addressing these issues. And we do have Matt Williams here from Public Works and Engineering. They are the great people that got our Handouts Don't Help signs up. And I think we have 67 now throughout the county, which are raising money for our community foundation and discouraging panhandling. But I think this idea would probably fall closely in line with the work that this group has done around communications. You know, that fourth C, and how are we communicating to the public what we are doing in Douglas County. So Matt.
Sure, and you know, per that request, I think it was Clareton and Wycliffe out there. We did end up putting 6 no parking signs out there on Tuesday night. Haven't heard back if they have helped the situation out there at all, but we do have the resources in our traffic sign shop to create and make temporary signs. We can move around at certain requests of the sheriff's office or from the commissioners. We can get those signs out there and just see how that works as far as taking care of the issue there. Hopefully not pushing it around. You know, our experience with permitted parking, you permit one area, it kind of pushes the problem to the next neighborhood or the next street. But absolutely, we're willing to jump on board and make sure that we give this pilot a shot and see if it helps.
Well, that's my favorite thing about working in Douglas County. They already did it. I mean, I always say we don't wait to do great, and that's amazing. I know the sheriff approached me and others about that idea. I think it was just last week. You know, and I shared that with Doug and our staff and engineering. So way to go, Matt, and to your entire team. I think that's really significant for all of us. To your point, you know, we want to have really good partnership with our municipalities. So I know what we have done with the Handouts Don't Help sign, which Castle Rock helped design, Lone Tree had a ton of input on. We have deployed those for free throughout the county and to municipalities that want them. How would it work with these signs if municipalities wanted partnership on that?
Well, I think we could go down the same path with these signs. These are not atypical signs. These are signs that you would see up in the local jurisdictions in the cities and towns anyways. They're your standard no parking signs. We're putting them on a temporary stand. That way we can pick them up, move them around as needed without putting a post in the ground. And I'm almost sure your public works departments have the same equipment that we do as far as getting temporary signs out there. We typically use it for work zone traffic control, but can be used for purposes like this. But happy to partner with the other public works departments in Lone Tree and Castle Rock and Parker and Castle Pines. So we're there. We got a sign shop. If there's a need for a sign to be made, we'd be happy to help.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Any questions? Yeah, Mayor Gray.
More of a statement.
Yeah.
In Castle Rock, just recently, over the last 6 months or so, we've installed no parking overnight in all of our public spaces.
Outstanding. Any other questions? You know, this is a tough one because, you know, again, as a Denver native, even seeing, you go to a place like Broadway and I-25, and at any given time, you will see 6 to 8 tents and tons of litter and vandalism and just, you know, it's decimated that intersection. And that's one of many throughout the Denver metro area where the overnight camping and the tenting has just created a blight on our community. And that's not to say that we don't want to serve those in need. We do. And for us in Douglas County, 100% of those that are seeking services get help. If they want help, they'll get it. But it's those that are service resistant and those that are service resistant and committing crimes that I think really pose the greatest challenges for us that we're not going to turn a blind eye to. So I have no doubt that the citizens we represent, the near 400,000, are saying, man, get a handle on it. Tired of seeing this. This is inappropriate. Get it done. And I'm really proud of Douglas County, our municipalities, and our partners for compassionately being honest about this and addressing that well. Wait, what other questions do we have on this particular issue? Any other questions? Well, probably a good segue to the HEART team update. And I'm sorry.
Manna.
Oh my goodness, we got to go back to Manna. Manna had a presentation. I think we were working on some tech. So back to Aaron White. Yay. It's right on the screen.
Thanks, guys. I'm Erin White, and I serve as the Executive Director of Manna Resource Center. And I was asked to talk with you guys this morning about some of the resources that our clients experiencing homelessness need in order to gain stability. At Manna Resource Center, we like to say that we're here to help our clients achieve real lasting change or transformation in their lives. And we've talked a lot about housing and the importance of housing, but we feel like there are significant barriers that our clients face that require more than just housing in order to help them gain that stability. A little bit about us, and that's on the next slide. We have 3 programs at Manna Resource Center. Manna Connect is our personal development program that combines professional coaching, working one-on-one with one of our coaches, along with career advancement through a career portfolio to help people obtain jobs that are career jobs and not just entry-level jobs. And sometimes in order to help somebody's career portfolio to be really robust, we help clients obtain a new skill or increase the skills that they have through educational opportunities. And then the third component of our Manna Connect program is our community. We engage as an entire program twice a month at our community gatherings, where everyone who's participating in the program, along with volunteer allies from the community, come together around a life skill and really engage in healthy relationships. The next program at Manor Resource Center is the Family Center of Douglas County. This program was launched early 2021 in partnership with Catholic Charities of Central Colorado and the Douglas County Department of Human Services, and is really looking at ways to strengthen families and help them achieve greater stability. Clients of the Family Center are also paired with a professional coach who helps them set and achieve goals. We also do a tremendous amount of resource navigation, helping our clients to be able to connect to other resources in the community that might benefit them, as well as engaging in community. So we have a peer support program called Parent Cafe, where parents can come together and talk about things that they experience related to specific protective factors that make a family strong. Our last program is our wellness program, and we have a mental health clinician on the team so that our clients can engage directly in mental health support. Upwards of 80% of our clients indicate that mental health is a need that they experience during the time that they're with us, and we're able to provide some of those resources directly through Manor Resource Center. You can go to the next slide. If you know me at all, you know that as I talk, I often talk in stories of the clients that we serve. And so today I want to talk to you about the barriers that our clients experiencing homelessness face through their own stories. And we're going to watch a quick video, hopefully, so that you can hear from someone in our program's own words.
My name is Brittany Hayes. This is my story. When my husband and I got divorced, he took both cars, both my little girls, and all the things I needed for my job. I started living in a motel, paying rent weekly. I made a lot of money really quickly in all the wrong ways. The motivation behind every poor decision I made was to be with my kids. That's it. I can't take back the damage that was done or the decisions that I made that led to where I was at. Ultimately resulted in prison time. The sentence I was facing was 16 to 60 years, and somehow I made parole after 4. And I was released at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I got on a bus to Colorado with nothing. I stepped off the bus and said, now what? I didn't know where I was gonna go, but I knew that God had a plan. When I got my job, everything seemed to be going well, but it was only a few months before I hit another wall. And so I called Karen, my boss, and the first thing I told her is, I'm calling you because you're the only person that would answer the phone. And I told her I'm in a really bad place.
Karen had heard about Mana Connect at her church and that she felt like she was a great fit for this program.
In the first meeting, I met Marari, and we talked about what my urgent needs were. I couldn't find anyone that would rent to me because of my past.
It took 3 weeks from the time that Brittany signed up for Mana Connect to the time that we were able to get her into a home. A member of Cherry Hills had this desire in her heart to be able to provide a home for someone at Mana Connect.
After all the ways that God has provided for me, what really blows my mind is that I'm going to get my daughter back. And after everything I went through, trying to make it happen on my own, I finally trusted God, and here I am, getting my daughter Violet to come live with me. Mana Connect made me feel whole again. They reminded me that I was a good person. I think a lot of people want to make a difference, but they don't know that this thing exists and that it's working. And I want people out there like Karen, players to know, homeowners to know, and those that are called will answer the call, that they'll step up. My hope would be that somebody out there who needs the help would find the support in Mana Connect and find healing in their own story too.
Brittany's story is really powerful. She had to move to Colorado to register with the probation officer and was able to get back on her feet through employment. She had a couch to sleep on And one day, as she left her probation officer's house, she learned that her vehicle was stolen and that couch was no longer
years old,
accessible to
this
her.
very solemn oath. When I grow up,
I'm going to talk over the news because I know we're short on time.
Trees. Something that pays them back for this sanctuary that they gave to me as a kid.
Guys, sweet. Are they on it?
There are these deep disturbances that happen to people throughout their lives, starting maybe when they're 8 years old. The trees were there as my witness.
I don't know much about trees, so I'll talk a little bit more about Brittany. Brittany engaged in the core services of the Mana Connect program. She went to coaching sessions, she engaged in community gathering. As you heard in the video, she was able to access one of our transitional housing units. But what was key to her story, that based on her criminal record, it was very difficult for her to be able to rent in our community. Her criminal background really was going to prevent that. So during her time in our transitional housing, she worked with a credit recovery specialist through a mortgage company because her ultimate goal was to purchase her own home. I mean, as we heard from Maria this morning, starter homes and condos are in short supply, and so she knew that that was a lofty goal. Mana Resource Center did invest significantly in her stability, and we had to offset her housing costs by a little over $5,000 in order to have her be in that transitional housing. But she prevailed and was able to, shortly after her time in Mana Connect, purchase her own condo. She also did gain custody of her daughter. And I'm excited to say that Brittany now has a nonprofit of her own as a peer recovery coach, working with people who have similar life experiences to hers. And her goal is to use that first condo that she purchased as transitional housing for her program. The next client that I want to introduce you to faced a barrier of substance use. Kay came to us as a recommendation from a family member who admittedly said that the family had completely given up on her. After obtaining a couple of months of sobriety, she came into the Mana Connect program and was able to really start working on her goals. Her family saw the change in her, and she had the unique situation that not many of our clients face, and that they stepped in to support her, and she was able to gain a job in the family business. Unfortunately, that job was in Castle Rock, and the couch that she was staying on was not, and so she had a significant transportation barrier. We used some rideshare funds that we have to be able to get her back and forth to work temporarily until we were able to secure a donated vehicle for her to be able to drive to and from work. She also engaged in financial literacy while she was with us in order to be able to get herself to a situation where she was able to rent an apartment of her own here in Castle Rock, close to her work. Our financial investment in Kay's story was less significant. She was able to obtain housing without the need of being in a transitional housing program. And she graduated from the program in only 10 months. Even though she's graduated, she continues to be part of the Mana Connect program as serving as a volunteer ally and sharing her experience with others. My next friend is Terrence. His sister actually referred him to our program because she is a graduate herself, and the barrier that he experienced is generational poverty. So I've told you about a criminal background. I've talked to you about someone experiencing substance use, but this young gentleman had grown up in the cycles of poverty and didn't know how to break loose. He had seen his sister have significant success, and so he thought he would give it a try. He also was able to move into one of our transitional housing units, and during the time that he was with us, paid off significant debt and worked to improve his credit, because in order to qualify even for an affordable apartment here in our community, you have to have fairly good credit, and you can't carry a large debt burden. And so those were the priorities that he worked on while he was in our unit. And we allow folks to stay in our housing units for 1 year as they work to accomplish these goals. And that's a really short period of time. You can see from his quote, he got eliminated over $20,000 in debt and improved his credit score from a basement level of 400. Through the Pathways program, we were able to help him with first month's rent to move into an affordable apartment here in Douglas County. Another thing that was key about his story is that Terrence didn't have the skills necessary to obtain a job at a sustainable wage. He only was able to work in entry-level positions, and Maria very eloquently explained to us that it's very difficult to be able to, it's really impossible to be able to afford housing at an entry-level job. So through a partnership with Activate in Denver, we were able to get him connected to an electrical apprenticeship program, and he is well on his way towards becoming a journeyman electrician. Terrence is also continuing to give back to the program, and as he serves as a member of the board for Manna Resource Center and is influencing our programs from a client perspective. And the last friend that I want to introduce you to is M. She was actually a referral to Manna Connect from Winter Shelter Network. She spent a couple of seasons staying in the network, and when we were not in operation for the shelter, she lived in her van here in Douglas County. She had a very successful career as a pharmacist that unfortunately through some various reasons she had to give up, and then she tried to support her family for a number of years until the family dynamics fell apart, and that's what led her to experiencing homelessness. By the time she came into Manna Connect, she was working 70 hours a week as a caregiver just to pay for the hotel that she was staying in so that she didn't have to stay in her van every night. And that was not sustainable. It wasn't physically sustainable and it wasn't economically sustainable. So in addition to the core resources of Manna Connect, she engaged with a lot of career professionals from the Mile High Society of Human Resource Managers that we have a partnership with. And those career professionals helped her to really understand what transferable skills she had, because at her dear age, entering into a new career field is very, very difficult. And so we've tried to build upon the skills that she already had. There was a significant investment. She also moved into transitional housing, but her barriers were significant due to her years of experiencing homelessness. That van that she lived in needed significant repair, but it was her home and a treasured part of her, and really for a long time, the only thing that she could call her own. And so there was a lot of investment made to keep that van running. But again, through the partnership with the Pathways program, we were able to help her with her first month's rent, and she moved into an affordable apartment here in our community. So what do these stories have in common, and how do they apply to what we talk about here today? On the next slide, you'll see some of the different categories that Rand Clark outlined on the Housing Plus blueprint that he introduced a couple of months ago. These are categories of resources that are needed in addition to the housing continuum that we've been talking about. And I want to just explain a couple of ways that Manna Resource Center seeks to answer the call to some of those resources. The first one was accountability. For us, accountability means a comprehensive assessment for all of our clients so that we can get a holistic view of the barriers they face and the needs that they have. Client focus and strength-based coaching. We ask our clients who they want to be and what they want their lives to look like as they graduate from our program, because this is their lives, and we want them to be able to reflect that. When we ask that question, so many people that we work with are not able to identify the strengths that they have, whether through low self-esteem or just really not being able to put their skills and core values to use. They can't identify them. And so it's really hard to ask them who they want to be without helping them with some identity development. And then I shared some of the tangible resources. You saw the financial investment that was made in some of my friends in order to help them gain stability. And so there's a real need for those resources. The second category on the Housing Plus blueprint is personal growth. At Manna Resource Center, that means financial literacy through a partnership with Financial Health Institute, a comprehensive career assessment to be able to identify those skills that clients have and where there may be a need for some additional skills in order to help them attain a career job. And then educational opportunities, whether it be parenting classes or professional development, we try to provide educational opportunities that our clients need. The third category on the housing blueprint was well-being. I talked about the mental health supports that we are able to provide and the community development that we think is core to the transformation that our clients achieve. But I've added a fourth category, and that's collaboration, and you guys have heard that word a couple of times today. We could not do the work that we do without the partnerships of our friends in the community, without the partnerships that we have with Douglas County and the Department of Human Services, without the DC Cares program that offsets some of the costs for housing that some of our clients that you met earlier today experience, without the partners that are here in this room that we collaborate with every day so that we could leverage the resources available in this community to help deeper and better serve our clients. So as we move forward and we talk about housing, I want us to consider that oftentimes it takes more than housing. And maybe you'll remember some of our friends that I've introduced you to and the journey that they went on. Any questions for me? Thank you for listening.
Erin, we are so deeply appreciative of MANA, of Cherry Hills. I mean, your commitment to Highlands Ranch and all of Douglas County has been just tremendous for decades. And your personal effort to personally connect with those that are in need. It's that huge capital C of compassion and community services that you are truly providing. And I know our Heart team couldn't do it without that great partnership with you. So thank you for that. How about giving MANA Resources a big round of applause? I know we are short on time. Chief, thanks for being with us. I know we're supposed to do a brief Heart update, so I'll turn it to Tiffany.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can you guys hear me? Just hold it. So for the month of October, we received 114 referrals. 82% of those were from law enforcement. We had 7 community partner referrals, 7 citizen calls, and 7 public referrals. Heart was able to contact 50 of those 114 referrals. 24 refused follow-up, 30 we were unable to locate, 3 were unoccupied camps that have been cleaned up. Of the 114 referrals, we had 112 that were unduplicated for last month. And our Heart navigators were able to provide ongoing case management to 21 clients. 4 were referred to motel vouchers. 1 was referred to benefit assistance. 2 to a shelter of their choice. 10 were assisted with food. 3 were assisted with housing support. And 5 were given assistance with transportation. The story that I have today, I came across a man living out of his RV in Parker in about June, I think it was in the summer. He recently was going through a divorce and didn't have a place to live, had his kids 50% of the time, but knew that he needed something more stable for his children. So we referred the man to a faith-based nonprofit organization who assisted him with weekly programming, family development, and wellness. And last week, the man contacted me after I sent him the list of affordable units back in the summer, that he was able to gain an apartment off of the housing partnership list. So he was able to afford something that was within his means. He moved into his place last week. He now has a safe, stable place for his children to be when he has his time with his kids. The thing that was different about this man, he was willing to do whatever. He was willing to call whoever multiple times a day to try to get somebody to answer the phone, provide me with an application. What do I need to do to fill it out? Where do I need to go? He was willing to put in the work. And with contacting me in June to having a place of his own in October is huge. So that is all that I have.
That is a ton, and what a tremendous accomplishment. We are so proud of Heart and the community partnerships you've developed. Just shining bright star for this community. Any questions for Tiffany with Heart? Maria? Yeah.
Thank you for that great report. It's so wonderful to hear about families being reconnected and working together in the community. I was curious if you all have any data of what it costs to have somebody who is homeless and receiving emergency care, and the police are being called out. And do we have that data for our county? Just curious. Thinking about, Aaron, we invested X dollars. How much does it cost us when they're on the street? Okay, just.
I think that's a really good question, and honestly, something that we probably need to be thinking about in the future. We have experienced, especially through HEART and the work they're doing, that they are partnering with many different resources throughout the community. So I think it is, a good idea to take a page out of Manna's book and start thinking about, putting a value towards those resources. So it's something that we will definitely look at going forward. I think that's a great point to bring up.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see that you're really making a difference and spending less money helping these folks this way versus having them long-term on the street and everyone footing the bill for the emergency services.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the diversions from emergency rooms and from, our jails, from other really negative externalities. I mean, we took a page out of the mental health initiative and their work in co-response, and we really believe that co-response is not only saving lives, but it's saving a ton of money. It really is. So thanks for that. With that, let's move to executive committee member updates. Any updates, Mayor Gray?
I feel like I'm talking a lot today. It's unusual.
I'm glad you're here.
So what I want to do, first of all, is thank everybody in the room for something that happened about a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. I got a email from one of my children's former teachers last week or 2 weeks ago, and said that her daughter, who works for the school district, needed help. And I reached out to Commissioner Layden and Jennifer Eby, Douglas County School District, Douglas County Housing Partnership, Health and Hope, and the way you guys rallied around and helped this individual was nothing short of phenomenal. She got Help and Hope assistance right away for food and that kind of thing. She got assistance from Douglas County School District right away. She had, and long term is she got a reduction on her rent, and it's just. That's one of the things I was so proud to be able to reach out to this group and have something turn around for her almost immediately. And it was just really, really great. So I wanted to say thank everybody.
Well, Mayor, if you hadn't reached out, we wouldn't have been able to do that. So thank you for your leadership and helping that individual out. Anything else from the executive committee? Okay, we're a little bit over, and I'm going to stick around. If you can't stay for public comment, no problem. We get that, but I just want to make sure that if there is any public comment that there are those here that can receive that. So let me open it up for any public comment. Is there any citizen comment in the room or online with regard to anything that we talked about today? Wow, no citizen comment. Well, we appreciate our citizens. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Have a good rest of your Thursday.